I have read this portion of Scripture over several times, trying to get an understanding of exactly what Jesus is expressing to us in these parables in Mark chapter 12, when it says, He began to speak unto them by parables. Now, this particular parable, he talks about a man who had planted a vineyard, and he had hired people to run it. And later on, he sent a servant down to the vineyard to bring back fruit from the vineyard, which would be some wine. And the people who were running the vineyard, instead of responding to the owner of the vineyard, instead began to persecute and began to beat up the servant that was sent. Again, I'm trying to understand the essence of the parable. Well, in order to do that, I had to go back in the Scripture, chapter number 11. And see, here's the thing about it, is it? When these Scriptures were written, there were not chapter and verse. And so sometimes where they stopped really probably wouldn't have been the best place to stop, because it continues on in the thought. So we have to go back chapter number 11, and a question that was asked of Jesus, and I say unto him, by what authority doeth those things, and who gave this authority to do these things? So Jesus is asking the question, or they're being asked of Jesus the question, what is your authority? Who has given you the authority to teach and proclaim what you do? Well, Jesus countered that with a question to them. He says, let's talk about the baptism of John. Was it from heaven or of men? Jesus said, answer that question. And those who had asked the question concerning the authority of Jesus could not answer the question, because they knew that if they agreed that the baptism of John was legit, then that would be in violation of all the things that they taught. We're talking about scribes and Pharisees. But if he or they spoke ill of John the Baptist, the whole crowd was going to stone him. So they just didn't answer the question. So on that, Jesus began to talk about these parables. And this parable that said, a man who planted a vineyard sent a servant to bring back fruit from the vineyard. And instead, that servant was ridiculed, beat, and suffered. You see, this is all beginning to give me a picture of the relationship between God and humanity, and how that humanity doesn't always understand what God has done to bring peace to the soul of mankind. But someday, and as we continue in these parables, we'll get a better picture. Someday, everyone will understand, because the Scripture says every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. It's Pastor Jack King with the gospel on the radio broadcast.